everyone! In today's video, I'm going to show you how I edit a wedding portrait in Lightroom. So in case you guys don't know, I am actually a full-time wedding photographer. I just don't share a lot of my wedding photos on my personal social media, but that is something that I really want to change. So if you guys want to see any wedding photography related videos, please leave your questions and suggestions down below in the comments, because I would really love to focus on making more wedding related videos if that's something you guys are interested in. So this is the photo that we are going to be editing today. This is my final edit. I thought I would show you guys where we're going to go with this photo. And here is the original unedited photo. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this image, and I'm going to take you through the steps that I did to edit this photo. As you can see, this was taken on an overcast day. It was raining kind of on and off during this entire portrait session. So the lighting is quite nice and flat and even, but for me, I love working with sunlight, so I feel like this image looks a little bit flat, and I want to bring a little bit more life into it with our edits. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit the shortcut R for our crop, and I'm going to bring our crop in a little bit just because I feel like there's a lot of white and negative space, which is almost a little bit too much. And normally I like to have my couples in the dead center of my photo, but because her dress is out really nicely, I'm just going to offset them a little bit, I think just about there. So the first thing I like to do with any picture is to edit the basic sliders first. And I want to balance out like all the lighting in this image, so I'm going to start by bringing down the highlights because the sky is really overexposed. Probably bring it down to about 90, and then I'm also going to bring the white point of this photo down as well because I want it to look just a little bit darker and a little bit more kind of moody because I feel like it would suit the weather we had. Then I'm also going to bring up the shadows just to bring back a little bit more detail in the bride's hair and the groom's suit as well, and then also bring up the exposure and the contrast. Once I'm happy with how the overall tones are looking, the next thing I like to do is add a tone curve. With the tone curve, I do still adjust and balance the tones of the image a little bit, but I mostly use the tone curve to add a little bit of style to my photo. So as you guys know, if you've been around in my channel for a while, I love to matte the blacks of the image. And then I like to create a kind of a soft S-curve with the rest of the tone curves. So I'll bring it up in the mid-tones here, and I'll also bring up my white points as well, just to have that extra bit of contrast in my photo. And once I have my initial points set down, I like to just slowly adjust them until I'm happy with what the final image looks like. Sometimes I find that it helps to look at a before and after of what you're doing as well, just to make sure you're happy and that you haven't kind of strayed too much from the original picture as well. Okay, so here is the before and after of the tone curves. I think I'm happy with what that looks like. We can always come back and adjust it later if we like as well. The next thing that I want to do, I usually do this at the beginning, is just add a little bit of sharpening to my photo, as I really like how it makes them stand out from the image. Now I want to move into split toning, and I only like to do very subtle split toning for my wedding images, as I do like to keep my photos looking as natural as possible. I don't want to do super crazy colorful edits to my photos. I just want to kind of enhance the original picture. So I'm going to bring up the saturation quite high so we can see what we're doing. And I think I want the hue for the highlights to be in the yellow orange kind of section. I don't want to push it too much into the greens. So I think there, and then I'll bring the saturation down. And I'm going to do the same kind of color with the shadows as well, as I want this image to look warm overall. Normally I like to do opposite colors in my highlights and my shadows, but for this image, I think I want to keep them both in like the warmer kind of look. So here's a before and after of just the split toning. As you can see, it's added that warmth into the image, and I really like what that looks like. The next thing I want to do is head back to our tone curve and head into the blue channel. With the blue channel, I want to create an S-curve that looks very similar to our RGB curve. I'm going to bring up the shadows of the blues up. So as you can see, that's adding a blue color to the shadows and the blacks of our image. So I'm just going to pull it up a little bit there. And then with the blacks, I'm going to pull the point down to add that it's a nice green, a yellow color to the shadows of the image, and I feel like that really suits this kind of farm photo location that we had. And then just so that green color doesn't affect their skin tone too much, I'm going to select a point here in the whites of the tone curve and pull that up to add a little bit of blue back into their skin, and that'll just help kind of balance the color of their skin tone out a little bit more. So if I pull it up so you can really see what's happening, it kind of cancels out that green just here on their faces, but I'm only going to do it a subtle amount. Now that we've added a little bit of blue with the tone curve, I'm going to go up to our white balance and bring up the temperature a little bit, and also the tint into the more pinky kind of hue. And now I want to head down to HSL, and I'm going to start with luminance. So what I normally like to do here is I like to bring up the orange slider to bring a little bit more attention to our couple. So this will just kind of brighten up their skin a little bit and make them stand out in the image. And then I also want to bring the luminance down for yellows and greens to make the background a little bit darker and thus helping them stand out as much as possible. And then the last thing I want to do in luminance is also bring down the blue slider, which will bring back some detail in these mountains here. So I feel like the color of the grass here looks a little bit orange and it's not as lush as I want it to be. So in order to fix that, I'm going to head into hue and move the green slider up as well as the yellow slider, and that'll help kind of give us a nicer green to our image. So I think just about there is really nice. And then I also want to bring our orange slider down to the left to add more of a pink tone to our skin tones rather than greeny yellow. So a very subtle amount, -5 is more than enough, I think. And then I'm also going to do the same thing with the reds. So here's a before and after of what we've done with only HSL so far with luminance and hue. I feel like luminance has made the biggest difference in the image. It's really making our couples stand out so much more from the background, which I really like. And then the last thing that I want to do is head into saturation, and I think I want to desaturate the grass just a little bit and bring up the saturation of the blue in the mountain. One of the last things I want to do with our sliders is to bring up the vibrance and the saturation a tiny bit as well, just again to add that little bit of extra oomph to our photo so it's super colorful. So here's a before and after of what we've done so far with all the sliders in Lightroom. So here's the before and here is the after. So as you can see, it's still quite a natural edit. It's just really brought out all the details and the colors that were there on the day, but it does look washed out in the original picture, mostly because of the overcast and the rainy weather that we had. So the final touches that I want to add to this image, the first thing I want to do is add a radial filter. So I'm going to click on this and create kind of like a circle around our couple. And then I want to bring down the exposure of the rest of the image. So I want to make sure I don't bring the exposure down too much that it's like a super obvious kind of radial filter around them. But I do want to bring it down enough that it makes them really stand out from the background. So I think around there is quite nice. Sometimes it helps to actually look at this little thumbnail here, as the radial filter looks a lot more obvious in a thumbnail sized picture than it does on a full screen image on your monitor. And you can also play around with the feather if you like it to be, you know, sharper, which I probably wouldn't recommend, or a little bit softer as well, which if you do an extreme edit, having a softer feather will really help blend that out and make it look more natural. So here is a before and after with the radial filter. We've got the before and the after. And I think that looks super beautiful. I really like that. I might actually bring the exposure up overall of the image a little bit more, just because I want their faces to be nicely exposed in the image. And then the very last thing that I want to do that I would be happy calling this a complete image is I want to use the spot removal brush to get rid of these kind of animal droppings that are on the ground in the background. We actually took this photo in like a farm kind of coop area. They had hairy cows and llamas and stuff, so there's a lot of animal droppings in the background. So I'm going to use the spot removal brush and keep a small as possible brush and just click over each of these kind of circles in the background. Usually Lightroom is pretty good at detecting where to sample from, but if for some reason it doesn't sample from a good spot, such as here, you can just click on that sample area and drag it down to wherever you prefer it to be. So now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the rest of these in the background, but I'm going to speed up the process so it's a little bit faster for you guys. And now we're back. So here is the final image. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I feel like aside from our slider edits, the radial filter really helped bring this image together and really made the couple stand out from the background. I'd love to know what you guys think of the edit. Do you guys ever use radial filters or graduated filters to help bring attention to certain parts of your image? I feel like I use them a lot more for my wedding photography than I do with my portraits. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you guys have any wedding photography related videos that you want to see from me, please let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. I make new videos every single week, so I will see you guys all next time. Bye!